at least not under the system that we understood to be the system. But, you know, Newborn explained to us what the United States' interest was, which I didn't agree with, but at least I understood what he was saying. The United States' interest was, look, this was a conquered country that we built back up, and you are not going to use the American judicial system to tear it back down after we spent the last generation building it back up so we wouldn't have World War III. So don't screw around with this. That was the United States' interest, which even though we didn't agree with it, at least I could understand it. Because it is possible that, you know, a runaway jury, which I was fully prepared to try and get, would award billions of dollars in punitive damages for starting World War II with stolen property, and 57 other runaway juries, and all of these other, Mel Weiss, these guys phrased it as class actions for all the survivors in the world, which meant there would have been a class action recovery. It would have been like the tobacco case, or it could have got, you know, way out of control and damaged the German economy. At least that is what Professor Newborn was telling us. So that was our position. Anyway, then I really thought myself that in my own conscience, if whatever we did resulted in the rest of the Holocaust survivors in the world not getting $7,000, that I would not be able to live with myself. That's the way I personally felt. And I told Ronnie that. I said, look, Ronnie, you know, I'm your lawyer. I can only go so far as your lawyer. This is your call. You want to know what I think? This is what I think, but it's what you think. You're the executor. You have to decide. That's what I think. Now, meanwhile, Yossi, you know, what we lived through together, it makes you very close. Yossi's telling him the opposite, but, you know, I respect that too. I could understand the opposite very easily, because the opposite was the standard lawyer thinking. Look, my client comes first. I don't care about the rest. You know, the United States can worry about itself. It has plenty of lawyers. The Dresden Bank can worry about itself. It's got plenty of lawyers. We're worrying about our client, and that's it. That was the way Yossi thought of it. But I really, that's what I thought, and I still think that. Anyway, Ronnie ultimately came around to what I thought, because what I did was I said, listen, Ronnie, you ought to talk to Professor Newborn directly. That is, you know, we should stay out of it. You talk to him yourself. And I told Professor Newborn that too. I said, look, you represent the United States. You talk to our client. Because we, frankly, we're giving him opposite advice. We didn't tell him we're giving him opposite advice. So that's what happened. Ronnie talked to Professor Newborn, and Ronnie ultimately came around to the view that he would participate in the foundation. And now the case, which started in Queens Supreme, went to the U.S. District Court in Newark, was now going to the International Organization for Migration in Geneva, Switzerland. So we're not doing the oral argument for that. We send Schutz, because he's in Berlin already, so he can go to Switzerland. But we write the whole thing up. We write, you know, all over again. We write up the whole case as to why Mr. Nacher is entitled to all of his money from all of the seizures. And Schutz presents this to the International Organization for Migration. This is this is 2001, 2002. Finally,
and that's separate from what's going on in Germany.
Yeah, it's separate from the German cases.
Three actions.
Right. The way we think of it, this case is for chattels. That is, the beer bottles, the cash registers, the tables, the hotel furnishings, the trucks. The German case is for the land, that all the hotels and breweries, because the Germans only were giving compensation for land. That's it, not for anything else. So our case in the IOM was for all of the money and the chattels, and the case in the German courts was for the land. So the IOM decides you're not getting anything. Why? Because Ignatz was the owner and Ferdinand was only an employee. That's their reasoning. We said, that's ridiculous. He's the executor of the estate. He stands in Ignatz's shoes. No. Too bad, they said. Okay, now we go back to the U.S. District Court in Newark, New Jersey, with a motion under Federal Rules of Civil Procedure Rule 60B. I'm sure it's at the tip of your tongue. That's for what happens when the settlement gets screwed up. The settlement monies don't get delivered. What happens? So I argue, look, this is a Rule 60B case. The settlement blew up. It didn't do as intended. The arbitrators didn't apply the right rules of arbitration. We were left out. We weren't supposed to be left out. Judge, put us back on your calendar or back to New York State Supreme Court, Queens County. Well, the judge, you know, he's like thinking about this. And he says, I want to know what the Justice Department thinks. Okay. Justice Department represents Treasury Department. Now it's another administration later. Now it's the Bush administration, it's not the Clinton administration, and this doesn't have the top priority. This was a file that was on President Clinton's desk. Now it's on the desk of Ori Lev, junior grade Justice Department lawyer, because the Bush administration doesn't make this a top priority. So Levitt and I, back on Amtrak, we go to see Ori Lev. And we sit in the Justice Department around a table like this, and I tell Ori Lev exactly what I'm telling you. We tell him this whole entire story, exactly what happened. And we say, look, Ori Lev, you are not standing in the way of Mr. Naka getting back his money, even after he's dead, because this all has meaning. And he listens to this, you know, for 3 hours we're haranguing him. And he says, well, you know, the best I can do is nothing. I'll stand up and say the Justice Department has no position. Thought this is a great victory. The United States government's going to come into the U.S. District Court in New Jersey and say, okay, we're not opposed to your Rule 60B motion. That's what happened. Ori Lev comes to Newark, New Jersey. We have oral argument on our Rule 60B motion, and he says, the government relies on what it said before, and he sits down. Pretty good. Well, the judge didn't, you know, I think he had his marching orders from Washington. I mean, I think he was selected to be this judge for reasons that are beyond me. So he says, no, too bad. You know, you consented to go to the arbitration, and, you know, you lose, too bad. So we take an appeal to the U.S. Court of Appeals in Philadelphia, the Third Circuit. We make all these same arguments. This isn't right. The settlement was not carried out. Therefore, we should be put back. Denied. So we promised Mr. Naka when we signed his will back in 1994, we'll take your case to the U.S. Supreme Court. That's exactly what we did. We filed a cert petition. We went to the U.S. Supreme Court. Denied. So that was 2008. This is 14 years of Mr. Naka litigation. But all around that time, Sebastian Schutz starts to produce. He starts to sell these liens. He recovers, I don't know, between $2 and $3 million, I think, for the Naka estates.
More like 5.
More like, no, now it's up to 5, because he doesn't get money, actually. He gets liens, the equivalent of mortgages, which he then sells on...
I'll explain.
Well, he'll explain what it is. And he sells them is what he does. And there's money. Now, one time, he comes to America with a briefcase full of these liens. And we meet at a big hotel in Midtown. And Ronnie is there, and I am there, and Mark is there. And 5 of us are there. And he opens up this briefcase full of these liens. And we're looking at him. And one of Ronnie's choices was to take some buildings back. Because the Naka Empire, they had apartment houses for their employees in Berlin. And he could have taken the houses back and started to be a landlord. So we said, Ronnie, you know, you don't want to be a Jewish landlord in East Berlin. We really don't think this is a good idea. You know, you should let him sell, so, which is what he did. But when we were sitting around the table, my grandparents would not believe this. They just wouldn't believe it, that a German lawyer is sitting here with these liens, with this, well, essentially with compensation, or repayment, actually. Anyway, so Schutz did that. Schutz actually won the case. So indirectly, from a completely losing case that was not going anywhere, every Holocaust survivor in the world got $7,000, and Naka estates got $5 million. So, all from not winning. Yes?
I just have one question.
Yeah.
Is there any thought or any consideration given to a proceeding in Switzerland pretty much being a sham, a dog and pony show from the beginning?
We thought that, but we tried to believe that the Treasury Department was not going to do that. But, you know, that didn't work out that way. Yeah.
All of the expenses that were incurred, the trips to Germany, the trips to, those were all, you faced all of those expenses on your own before?
Yes, but the Treasury Department, with money from the Dresdner Bank and all the German corporations that caused World War II, paid us back.
You paid you
we
back.
Got paid back. Oh yes,
you
what I did
fronted all that expense.
Yeah, well, we fronted. We have a general practice. Yeah, we have a general practice. You know, any of you in general practice? Okay, general practice is like a roller coaster. Sometimes you have money, you win a big case, you have a $100,000 fee, fine. You paid your taxes, it's gone. Now you have no money, you're borrowing money. Now this guy pays you $3,000, this guy pays you $5,000, this guy pays you $200. You know, the money shows up, it doesn't show up. You borrow money, you don't have money, you have money. It's not relevant. You know, if you've been in the general practice long enough, money does not have its face value, even remotely. You could have cases in your drawers of broken bones that are someday going to get hundreds of thousands of dollars or zero, where you spent $5,000 on expert reports and index numbers and all this stuff, and maybe you're going to get it back and maybe you're not. Now, do you worry about this? I mean, you could, but in which case you'll never sleep, so you better not worry about it. What you do is you accumulate enough cases so some of them are going to hit. We didn't think this was going to hit, but
I did.
But he did. So, Yossi thought, I thought this case, we are doing it for reasons that are not easily explained. That is, always with me were the 292,000 soldiers, the 6 million Jews, and the 60 million people. I mean, what happened, the generation before us, what they lived through, there is nothing we lived through that is even remotely like this. I mean, when I read the headlines, having lived through this, I laugh. I mean, this is nothing. I mean, this was crazy. World War II, we think of World War II as inevitable. It wasn't inevitable. It wasn't inevitable at all. Mr. Naga could have stood up and said, I'm not putting up with this. I'm calling the radio. I'm calling the newspaper. I'm the richest man in Germany. I'll buy a radio station. Why didn't he do that? He didn't do that. He should have done it. I thought of that. I never said that to him. But I'll say it to you now. If something like that goes on, don't sit still. Don't go to Belgium. Go buy a radio station. Yeah. Don't just sit still and take it. But that's easy to say if you're born an American. See, you don't realize how valuable American citizenship is until you live through this. Where you can sit across the table from your own government and say no. Not a lot of people in the world, they can't do that. If they do that, they go to jail. With us, they gave us money. I mean, this is a very different kind of government,
Let me talk about Ronnie a little bit. Paul mentioned that he and Mark were talking to the executor and trying to convince him not to appeal and to accept the offer of the government. My position was not only to represent the client to whom our duty was, we gave him our promise, even though we never got one penny from the client, it was a contingency case. My feeling was that in the public opinion court, we will win no matter what. So my position was to convince our client not to agree with anyone and to go directly and appeal to the circuit court, federal circuit court, and then to the US Supreme Court while nothing is settled. My belief was that, unlike what they think, that in the United States alone, I think there were almost 400,000 people waiting to get paid $7,000. Our client was under the impression, and he thought about it almost a month, a big dilemma between his duty to his family and client according to the will of his great uncle, and between hundreds of thousands of people who were entitled to compensation under slave labor, 7,000, 6,000, 5,000, depending what the circumstances were, and people were giving him dirty looks in the halls of the federal court in New Jersey, like accusing him, you're the only one who's stopping us from getting our money. Or it was a moral victory for most of those people who never saw a penny. It wasn't just the money, even though $7,000 in Poland, in Romania, it's big money. But there is also the moral victory that after 65 years, there is some kind of justice. My point of view wasn't money at all. My point of view was, once we refuse to settle, the pressure will go not only on us, the pressure will be also on Dresdner Bank. The media was there. If you remember on the court, they appeared. The New York Times was there. And they would have written that one executor disagreed, refused to settle, and there would have been a huge pressure, and we could have gone, and who knows, the federal court might have, the circuit court might have reversed the federal court, or the US Supreme Court might have reversed the federal court. That was my thinking.